We begin tonight at 5 o'clock with breaking news as the first day of the special session here in Indiana comes to a close.
Indiana is the first state in the country to hold a special session, giving people the chance to express their views on a proposed abortion ban. And we've seen hundreds of protesters inside and outside the State House. Look at this crowd we saw outside just a couple hours ago. They even blocked some streets as people on both sides of the issue made their voices heard.
That's right. They spilled out onto Market Street and also Capitol Street. And then this is a topic that also got the attention of the Vice President, Kamala Harris, arriving in Indianapolis this morning, meeting with lawmakers as the special session began. And we've been there for all of the developments today.
We've got live team coverage with our team of reporters breaking down the proposed bill and what Hoosiers have to say about it.
And we're going to start tonight with Emily Longnecker. She's live inside the State House with a look at the calls from the crowd there. They have been vocal. Emily.
And Felicia, there is so much passion and conviction on both sides of this issue, and it's playing out right here outside the Senate chambers as senators wrap up day one of hearing testimony from the public on SB 1. I'm told from people inside the chamber that they have been able to hear people outside here shouting all day, and this has been the scene all day here inside the State House. Members of the public lined up outside the chamber, some waiting to have their voices heard by lawmakers, others raising their voices outside. Sometimes the scene devolved into shouting matches between opposing sides. Other times, activists in both camps stood side by side holding signs.
I believe that abortion is a health care right that is important for all individuals who can become pregnant to have access to safe abortions. There are lots of reasons why a person might choose to have one. It's not up to me why that choice is, but I think it's important that we have that choice.
There is a sanctity of life to be considered, and just because a baby can't talk doesn't mean that they don't already have a personality formed.
So very different opposing views on this issue. And you can see this crowd, even as the testimony is set to wrap up here at any minute inside those Senate chambers. You can see that this crowd isn't going anywhere. Their voices are not going anywhere. Many of these same folks say they plan to be here again tomorrow on day 2 of public testimony. I'd like to go live right now to my colleague Karen Campbell. She is outside the State House taking a look at the crowds out there. Karen?
It's been a day full of emotion, a day full of passion. We're out here in front of the State House now. The crowd was much larger earlier today. It has dispersed from what it was earlier today. But as you see now, I mean, you still have those pro-life activists sitting on the steps of the State House holding their signs high. Again, some of them have been here since early this morning. Now, for many who couldn't get inside the State House, anti-abortion activists, they gathered on the steps and on the grass. Now, the crowd chanting phrases like, "My body, my choice." Pro-life activists clearly outnumbered here today. Now, I did find 2 groups of pro-life activists, one members of a church group. Now, some in that group agree that that abortion bill should have exceptions when it comes to the mother's health. The other group could be heard chanting, "Abortion is murder." Now, pro-choice activists say they want lawmakers to know the impact banning abortion would have on women. Take a listen.
We have such a high maternal mortality rate. You're essentially, making it so that women might die without any say as to whether they have the pregnancy or not.
I strongly believe that life is granted by the Almighty, and nothing should take that away from people.
And after hours of chanting in front of the State House, activists, they began marching around the State House, police blocking off streets just to ensure their safety. Now, cars have been driving by, of course, here on Capitol Avenue all afternoon, honking their horns in support of these activists that you see here sitting on the steps of the State House. Again, we did have both sides out here today, but again, pro-choice, activists, they clearly outnumbered those who were pro-life. But again, this is a very long debate, and again, these activists, protests, they're going to be here for quite some time. Back to you.
Absolutely, Karen and Emily, very passionate issues, people on both sides of the issue wanting their voice heard. Thank you for bringing us that. This special session is just getting started, and it's expected to last all week, if not longer.
So at the heart of the matter, this proposed legislation. Sierra Putman joins us live at the State House with a look at this proposed legislation written by Republicans that is firing up all these protesters. Sierra.
Is starting in the Senate. The Senate Republicans actually drafted this bill, and I was in the chamber for most of the day. Inside, you could actually feel the building shaking, and you could hear the chants from people outside. Most of the chants that we heard were from people who want Indiana to continue to have abortion access. Now, today started, and it was mostly procedural. That is when we had senators starting to meet at 11 a.m. They were meeting right across the way. You can't quite see the window, but in that chamber was when they were meeting. All but two were present. 2 hours later, a committee started to go over the bill. It bans abortion, except for in the case of rape, incest, the life of the mother, or if the fetus is incompatible with life. More than 300 people signed up to testify today. Each person was given 3 minutes to talk. This is what some of what lawmakers said about the bill before testimony began.
Many in the pro-life movement have long believed in exceptions to abortion restrictions for the life of the mother, and that exception is included in Senate Bill 1. In addition, we recognize there are heartbreaking cases where, because of violence committed against women and young girls, providing some additional exceptions is necessary.
For 50 years, this was the right of a woman to make a determination as to her own health and her own pregnancy. And the Supreme Court, 5 people, took that right away from women. And here in Indiana, we're going to legislate and take that right away from women in this state.
Now here's some video of some of the people waiting to speak today. We likely are only going to hear a fraction of those people who signed up. Today's hearing is supposed to wrap up at 5 o'clock. We are waiting to find out exactly when it's going to wrap up. If people did not get to speak today, despite signing up, well, then they can come back tomorrow. This committee will meet again at 9 a.m. and people can sign up in person starting at 8 a.m. We're going to take it over to Rich Nye, who was also in Senate chamber with me earlier today.
Hi. Phone 3, right?
I'm asking the SB1 language be stripped and a bill be replaced with the language similar to HB 1282, which was a complete ban on abortion with no exceptions, no compromise, no regulation.
The thousands of Hoosiers that have come out to the State House today, that are here rallying outside that you can hear so well, they've come out to the State House today because you are finally taking your shot at eliminating a crucial aspect of reproductive health care and reducing over half of Hoosiers to second-class citizens.
And I'm Rich Nye at the State House. That's just a small sampling of the testimony that we've heard so far on Senate Bill 1. That testimony began at 1 o'clock and is continuing now. The committee chairman has said they'll go a little bit past 5 o'clock tonight, and then testimony will continue again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. They have scheduled 3 hours of testimony on the bill tomorrow morning. If you signed up today and didn't get to speak yet, and so far we've only had about 35 of the hundreds of people who signed up to testify on this bill. If you're on the list, you can come back tomorrow. You'll still be on the list to testify when the committee continues its work at 9 a.m. Outside the State House and throughout this hearing, as already has been mentioned, you can hear the chants of the abortion rights advocates throughout the afternoon. At times when the doors was opening, a distraction certainly, and almost drowning out some of the testimony. We heard testimony from private citizens, from doctors, from advocacy groups on both sides. We heard from pastors, from rabbis, from others who are the faith community. So many people testifying on this bill, but what's most interesting is that we heard almost no one testify in favor of this bill today. The abortion rights advocates, they don't want any further restrictions whatsoever on abortion in Indiana. And most of the anti-abortion advocates, in fact, all of them who testified today, they all said they're opposing the bill because it's not strong enough in protecting life, protecting the preborn. And while this crowd is certainly loud outside, from the abortion rights side, there were more people testifying inside today who were anti-abortion in terms of the overall number of people who testified.
All right, Rich, thanks so much. It's so hard to gather your thoughts when you've got all that going on there. Thanks for nailing that for us and help us understand the news that's unfolding at the State House right now.
Absolutely. A lot of noise out there. Thank you. Rich Nye and Sierra Putman there. An Indiana special session is getting national attention, too. These
are images from this morning. This is when Vice President Kamala Harris arrived in Indianapolis. She was coming here to meet with Hoosier lawmakers. Jenny Runovich was at the roundtable discussion that she held with the Democrats and joins us now with what that conversation was like today. Jenny?
Yeah, and Anne-Marie, this really shows how it's a national focus on Indiana right now. That roundtable discussion held here at the State Library this morning, not far from the State House. Vice President Kamala Harris says she came to Indiana to fight for women's reproductive rights. As mentioned, we are the first state in the country to hold a special session since the overturn of Roe versus Wade. So she wanted to be here to talk with lawmakers in person. More than 24 lawmakers spent about an hour with the Vice President today. Reporters only allowed in for a few comments made at the start, but in those comments, Harris, who is a former prosecutor, criticized the abortion bill by Hoosier Republicans, saying the restrictions proposed here would essentially amount to a complete abortion ban.
Do be clear, and maybe some people need to actually learn how a woman's body works. But when you understand how a woman's body works, you will understand that the parameters that are being proposed mean that for the vast majority of women, by the time she realizes she is pregnant, she will effectively be prohibited from having access to reproductive health care that would allow her to choose what happens to her body.
And Vice President Harris today also addressed that case that really thrust Indiana into the national spotlight. And that's the 10-year-old Ohio rape victim who came here to Indiana for an abortion. We'll share her comments on that case, what she had to say about that, coming up in our next half hour.